The bar is really high for plant-based foods. Consumers are expecting them to be really healthy. They're expecting them to have very short and recognizable ingredient decks. They're expecting them to be on par from a price perspective with the animal products they're replacing, and they better taste as good as, if not better than, the products they're replacing. Also going to see more of a focus on, quote, clean label. And I say quote because it's not completely clear what clean label even means. Includes meaning having a short ingredient deck and having an ingredient deck with very recognizable names. I would argue that plant-based milk has already achieved that mass commercialization. I mean, that product category has 40% household penetration and has already captured 15% share of the market. Now, granted, that was over a few decades. It took that long to get to that point. And I think plant-based meat is well on its way to mass commercialization, although it's still really early days, right? When you look at the retail sales data, it still makes up less than 2% of all meat sales. I do think, economies of scale will help bring these prices down to achieve more mass market penetration. And you've already seen the prices of many of these products have actually come down dramatically. Some manufacturers are actually solely focused just on the price, and they're rethinking the manufacturing process. So rather than using the traditional methods of making meat through extrusion, they're actually upending it and thinking, okay, if we can actually change the manufacturing, maybe we can actually lower the prices. And I think that there are several areas of innovation that we're focused on, as well as I think just, probably the general industry. One is, again, back to this clean label notion. So it's how do we actually help manufacturers by giving them ingredients that are really recognizable in name. They're really clean label. They're typically labeled as natural flavors. So that's something that we're very committed to, and we already offer a wide portfolio of ingredients that really are considered clean label. You'll notice in a lot of the plant-based meat products that there's something called methicellulose. It can be labeled under different names, but it's a very long, chemical sounding name. In reality, it's actually just fiber, plant fiber. But there is a move to try to remove methicellulose from labels as well. Oftentimes with plant-based products, in order to make the protein white in color to mimic something like plant-based chicken or seafood, you may see titanium dioxide listed. That's another ingredient that many manufacturers are trying to replace with something that's less unnatural sounding. I think from an ingredient perspective too, there's a real focus on trying to create ingredients that replicate that succulence and juiciness that you find in animal products, which is more challenging in plant-based products. I think a lot of the innovation too that we're focused on, and that I think others are as well, is on the proteins themselves. So, and it's mostly in the way that they're manufactured, in order to create proteins that really mimic animal proteins in the way that they, have the way that their texture and the way that they perform when they're cooking. So that can be produced through various forms of extrusion. So for example, high moisture extrusion is something that we are involved in through our partnership with a company called Oya in the Netherlands. And that allows us to provide pieces of protein that really mimic chicken, the way it actually pulls apart and the way it chews. I think another area of ingredient innovation is in sodium reduction. So as I mentioned at the beginning, as more consumers really start focusing on the back of pack nutrition and the healthfulness of these products, they're going to want to see lower sodium levels in these foods. Our company's vision is to reach over 2 billion people with sustainable nutrition. And under that overarching vision, we have 4 priority areas globally, and one of them is plant-based. So our company is very committed to plant-based. As you know, obviously it's a major consumer trend, but it's also a really sustainable way to feed the global population. We have a portfolio of technologies today under what we call the Radical portfolio that can be used to make most plant-based products, whether it's a yogurt, ice cream, burger, or nugget. The ingredients range from base proteins, flavors, coatings, and I think what's really important is food protection. So, you know, there is a big focus in the food manufacturing industry on reducing food waste, and food protection is a great way to do that by lengthening the shelf life of these products as well as maintaining their quality. Kerry has over 20 years of experience in extrusion. And that's due to our cereal business. And we've leveraged that to create a selection of clean tasting, high performing proteins. So, you know, our company is very committed to the plant-based sector. And I think, you know, again, what's unique is that we're able to provide a wide range of technologies and ingredients to make a full product. One of the biggest challenges is actually in finding contract manufacturing. So, you know, many of the companies, not just startups, but even some of the large CPG companies, don't necessarily want to or own the equipment that's needed to produce all of the many different kinds of products they may be producing. So they turn to contract manufacturers. And I think that there is a real lack of co-mans that specialize in plant-based products. And the ones that do exist are at capacity. So I think that's a huge gap. And I know that there are a lot of people who are actually trying to work to solve this problem. I think we're really, again, only getting started. From just a product development perspective, I think we're getting started from the point of, as I mentioned before, that there are so many different avenues to still explore from a product format perspective, from all the different species. And I think Kerry is very well poised to seize this opportunity because we already have such a broad portfolio of solutions to help make products that taste really good and that are healthy and sustainable. I think, COVID actually brought a unique opportunity in that a lot of consumers actually experienced these products for the first time. So as they potentially ran into meat shortages in their grocery store, it forced them to turn to alternative proteins. So I think that actually helped the industry greatly. I think also we're seeing more and more food service companies focus on offering plant-based options. And I think that's one of the first places that consumers often try products. And once they've actually experienced them and had a good experience with them, that it then encourages them to potentially try to cook those on their own. So I think the more and more restaurants we see who are adopting plant-based is also a really good signal for the industry. I think the future also will eventually start to include some of the other technologies that are included in alt proteins besides just plant-based. We're seeing more and more companies in the precision fermentation space who are making ingredients either for meat or dairy products to help solve some of those challenges I discussed, such as succulence and juiciness and authenticity. All those kinds of challenges that some of the plant-based products do have. And I think cultivated meat and fat, while again, pretty early days from a scale-up perspective, it'll be interesting to watch how that sector can also potentially, work with some of the plant-based companies to sell hybrid products that are, a mix of both of those.